Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Summer Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gayle Nicholson. I'm so happy to see you back with us again today. And I am very, very excited to introduce to you a lady that I have just recently started getting to know. But I love her backstory and I love the things that she's got in store for you and the gifts that she's going to be giving you today. So let me introduce you to Miss Sophie Sherwin, the Bucketlist Bootcamp leader from SoFree.com. Thank you for being here with me today, Sophie. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Gail. It's an absolute pleasure across the pond and connecting. And I love the fact that, yes, we're celebrating summer and hopefully moving forward into some people are coining it the new normal. It can be sort of just, let's create a newer life than we had before. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm happy to have you. I think we found a unicorn. You're in the UK and there's sunlight behind you, like bright sunlight. How's the weather over there right now?
I know we're in the middle of a huge heat wave. So, of course, everything has stopped. I mean, the weather stops more people than the pandemic ever did. So, yeah, I mean, railways, the roads start melting, everybody starts melting. So, but let's not complain because we don't see it very often. And it's great to have it. But yes, nobody has air conditioning. So we all just walk around like big sweaty pits.
Well, that sounds enjoyable.
Oh, it's lovely.
Awesome. Well, when we started getting together, you were telling me, a really good story about how people tend not to be adventurous in their life. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to give us a little bit of a background on what made that the most important thing to you is having people have more adventure in their life.
Sure. I mean, it's made a huge difference in my life, being able to have that freedom, and being able to do something that just makes me excited, that lights up my life. It makes such a huge difference to happiness, to my relationships. And so there's a huge ripple effect. And the way it started was I've had it modeled from from my mum, who sadly passed away 12 years ago. But it really was the focus when my father died when I was 4, and she was left with 4 children, a very successful, busy business. And also her hopes and her dreams with him were crushed. So she had to obviously grieve in her own way, which she did. But what she did was she never allowed her being on her own hold her back. She loved having new experiences, joining new groups, meeting new people, going traveling on her own. I remember she told me that because I used to ask her how do you have the confidence to go traveling on your own, because it's only in the last, I'd say, 10 years that it's actually become more acceptable to be traveling on your own, especially for women. And she used to say it's all good. She used to go in groups, so it was slightly easier. But she used to say the first breakfast was always the hardest, because that's where you sort of awkwardly went to the buffet, grabbed your breakfast, and then sort of panned the room to see where you can sit. And then you scurried to find the empty table. And then as obviously you started connecting with people because of why you've come together, which is through the travel or a hobby or something, and then you can start chatting about that, and then day one breakfast is long and forgotten, and you have a brilliant time. But she never let that stop her. She never let fear hold her back, or her confidence. That first breakfast would never stop her from going somewhere again, or saying hello to other people, or meeting other people, which I always thought was great. And she would embrace life. She would say yes to all these opportunities. And that was modeled on me, and I grew up with that. But of course, teenagers never listen to their parents. I mean, who does? So I didn't actually properly embrace it. I've always been a person where I am curious. I love to learn. So I will do that side of things. But it was only until 12 years ago when she passed away that just before that, when she was terminal, we managed to really have lots and lots of chats about what her life, my life, and life in general. And of course, I asked her what if she had any regrets, and she said she had many. And I thought, wow, goodness. And she said, but the things I regret was not doing anything. It was never about doing things, because even if something goes wrong, then you can at least learn from it, or realize that you're not going to put that back on your bucket list. You're going to tick it off or rip it off, or whatever you're going to do. But so at that point, at that moment, I thought, that's it. That is what I need to do. Is I need to start really embracing being an adventurer, really stepping into and following her legacy of that. And I haven't stopped since. That was 12 years ago. Still living a life, as I say, adventure. It's come at some costs. I decided 2 years ago that I would embark on the entrepreneurial road, and I gave up a very good job after 11 and a half years. And one of the reasons is I wanted more freedom, and that's a lot of why I wanted freedom to do my adventures. But then, of course, I developed a fear of flying. So yeah.
Interesting. How do you develop a fear of flying?
Exactly. After 40 something years, yes, of loving flying, I suddenly developed a fear of it. And I did actually realize that it was more to do with the circumstance of I basically manifested fear of not having a job and a security. I put that onto the flying. So it was quite interesting. So I did try different therapies. I tried the red wine therapy.
Tell me more about the red wine therapy.
Honestly, yes. It is very good. The only problem is that when I had a really pretty awful flight, and of course, just downing the red wine and trying to come to a place of calm, but never getting there. I got to my place. This was actually when I was in the States, and I just arrived in LA. And I got a taxi and then was dropped off, and then realized I'd left my laptop in the back of the cab. And at that point I said, right, no more red wine, which had worked a little bit. I tried drugs next. I went to an emergency ER and said, listen, please give me drugs. And so they did. But I'm so terrified of getting hooked on anything apart from red wine that it didn't really work, because they gave me such a small dose. So I have come to calm and peace, and I do still, of course, have my wine, and I just use a lot of breath work and these squeezy stress balls, and pray. So yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So awesome. So I love, forgive me for going back so far, but I love that mindset piece about the first day breakfast is the hardest part, and once you actually take that step into the buffet line, into the, kitchen, cafeteria type room or whatever, and sit down, find a place, and realize that you have one thing in common with everybody else there that brought you there. The rest is just an adventure. The rest is just making friends. The rest is just having fun. That's golden right there. I love it. So tell me what you have put together, what you're up to, what you're creating going forward that you want to share with people.
Yes. So basically, I have taken everything that I know, that I've been through, all my life experiences. I also have a background in psychology and psychotherapy. So I use psychological tools. I also am a coach as well. I've done nutritional life coaching using a holistic approach. And so I put it all together. And also I have great intuition, and I help people move through fear. Fear is with us every single day. We can't get rid of it. But what I do teach is to acknowledge it and disempower it rather than distract from it or try and get rid of it completely. Because we can also use fear in putting us forward, because fear and excitement can feel very much the same. If you feel fear, often you're uncomfortable. So it's just switching the mindset to say, okay, fear is trying to tell me something, so let's acknowledge it, bring it to the party, but let's move through it and let's move forward. So I've taken that, and as I say, my love of adventure and my wanting people to really embrace life and do what they want to do. I mean, adventure, when you think of adventure, often that you think of something big or travel. It's not necessarily that. It can be big. It can be dramatic, like me. I tend to do dramatic things like move countries or go traveling and things like that, or give up my job after 11 and a half years. That's my kind of adventure. But it can be as small to somebody as well as having a conversation that's uncomfortable for them, to move through that fear, to move through the limiting beliefs. So basically what I'm wanting to do is I've helped many women do this, to have more adventure in their life. I had a lady who she was living in the south of France, and she really wanted to move to Canada, but she just let fear hold her back and stuck, and she was really unhappy. She just dreamt of the Canadian dream, and we talked about it, and she eventually made that move, and which was incredible, and she's still over there and she's having an awesome time. So
that's good to hear.
It's great, and I love those kind of stories, but again, that was dramatic.
Yeah.
I have another lady who she was having an interview for a job, and actually she had to do a minute video, and she was terrible on video, and she fear was stopping her from applying for this perfect job. And so I talked her through it, and we came up with ways that she could feel comfortable doing it. And she actually did the video. I mean, I think we did about 68 takes, and after that, a couple of bottles of wine, but she did it. She didn't get the job, unfortunately, but it was something she achieved, she accomplished. So what I would love to do is for people to start setting goals, to do something, and once you do that and you feel achieved, you then go on. It's a ripple effect, and it will go on and on and on, and you will feel that you can accomplish the world, which is really amazing. And then what it does is it also inspires other people. You can also then help other people. So it is an amazing wave effect. So what my mission is to build a tribe of over 10,000 people by the end of this year, to join a group that I have set up, and it's called Never Live with What If, because I think that it's very important that we think about our future and never regret what we didn't do, and never even regret what we do. We can be sad about behavior that we maybe engage in, but it's always for a reason, and often it's from anger or fear. Well, actually, anger and fear are the same things. So that is what is very exciting. And then, of course, you mentioned the Bucketlist Bootcamp Challenge, which is, we can talk about that more in depth. But so yes, that's basically what I want to do, is to inspire and transform people, so they get more adventure in their life, and they just get lives that they're excited about, that lights them up, and have big fat smiles on their faces rather than getting bogged down in life.
Awesome. I do want to talk a little bit more about the Bucketlist Bootcamp.
I know.
In a moment. But first, I've written a couple of books myself. but
Uh-huh.
only one of them has been published yet. And I know that you're also an author. So tell me a little bit about your book.
I sure am, and congratulations on being a published author yourself. It
Thank
is
you.
it is a such an amazing thing to do, because we all have books in us, but I think only a very small percentage only go on to get them published. Um, but yeah, so what I did was my mum's adventurous journey began back when she was 19 years old, and she decided that she had had enough of her little tiny life in a little village in the north of the UK, jump on a boat, because that was the option at the time. And it took her 7 days to sail to Canada, where her adventure began. She started off in Toronto as a secretary, and that wasn't enough for her. So she then decided to go to Banff and become a housekeeper in the Banff Springs Hotel, where she did a summer season as a housekeeper. And they started hitchhiking because on their days off, they didn't just want to sit doing nothing or sit watching TV or whatever they did at the time. They wanted to go off and see Canada, so they would hitchhike to places, which I think is very inspiring. The fact that she didn't just want to sit around doing not a lot. Two of her friends at the time, they just decided very nonchalantly one day, saying, "Okay, well, at the end of the season, what are we going to do?" They decided to go and buy some backpacks, completely overpack it, overload themselves, and hitchhike from Canada down to Mexico. And what Mum did was she actually diarized her adventures, and the people she met and where they went. I mean, they got hitches wherever they went, because these people were so fascinated by these three foreign girls, young girls, hitchhiking and backpacking around the States and Canada. And then they were often offered places to stay, because they wanted the people who were giving them lift, they would say, "Oh my God, come and meet my cousin, or come my sister, or my wife, or my husband, and tell your stories," because they had many stories. And luckily for me, she diarized them. So I decided to tell her story, and through the story of the book, and it's called There's Always a Hitch, I wanted to also have that as leverage to inspire people to be an adventurer. So what I decided to do was to travel to all the places she went to, and almost do a then and now comparison of what she saw and what I saw. And it got very emotional at times. There were times when it really hadn't changed. But then, of course, there were times, especially in Phoenix, I mean, that's completely, mostly modernized now. I know that they are now doing this regeneration project, and they're trying to keep the history of it all. So when I went there was nothing left of what Mum had seen or been to, which is a shame. But so that's what I did. So I diarized my travel memoirs. So I have my travel memoirs, and then interspersed are her words and her diary as well. And what I didn't realize was the synchronization of the universe, and it happened to be exactly the same time. So it was the same month, September, October, and November. It was just 61 years apart, which was incredible. And then on one of my journeys to Las Vegas, I actually realized that back in 2006, my mum and I had actually visited on the same day Las Vegas and San Francisco, and so it was just
Wow.
it was incredible. I mean, there were many times I burst into tears. So I'm sure that all on the spy cams on the US, I looked like this mad woman for the UK, just blubbering the whole time. But it was just incredible too. It was great adventures. I met some amazing people. I went to places that I would never have gone unless Mum hadn't have taken me. And so the title There's Always a Hitch was actually started by Mum and the girls, because they wanted to write a book, but they couldn't because their typing skills were non-existent. So I thought, of course, I have to honor that. And they made it as There's Always a Hitch, as in There's Always a Hitchhike. But for me, I lived it in a different way, which, of course, There's Always a Hitch, as in There's Always a Disaster. So yeah, it was kind of one disaster after another for me. But then it's always how about overcoming those disasters, not letting them get you down, not then saying, I mean, there were times when I wanted to give up, of course. And also the fear of, well, who wants to read this book and things like that. But you walk through the fear. And I was actually lucky that I had a great editor along the journey in Australia with me. But other than that, I was traveling on my own. So it was an interesting way to see the States. I did it as authentically close to them. I didn't fly anywhere. I used train and
I was going to
bus.
ask you, did you hitchhike? What years were you doing it?
Yeah, this was last year, so no, I didn't. I didn't
I was going to
hitchhike.
say, because it's
Yeah.
funny because when you first mentioned your mother's travels, I'm
Mm.
like, oh, the days when you could hitchhike across a country. You
Yes.
know, now they'd have been a news report within a week. I
Yes.
think, you know.
Yes.
So I wondered if you had had the adventurous spirit to, actually hitchhike, and
Yeah.
you know. So I'm glad that you used some modern day signposts, if you will,
Mm.
and modified the trip a little bit. Anyway, but how marvelous to do things that your mother had done on the same day, 60 some years later. And
Mhm.
just see all the differences in the world and all of that. Where can that book be bought? Is it available
It
for purchase?
It sure is, yes. Hardback, paperback, and ebook can be purchased on Amazon, or you can purchase through Barnes and Noble online. And I think other places too, but they're the major ones. And then
Mm-hmm.
if anybody would like a signed copy, then they can always just get in contact with me and I can have that arranged. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. Now, tell me about the bucket list boot camp. What exactly does that entail? Am I going to have to zip line? I'm not so sure about zip lining.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. But also, we could talk about the fear of that.
Okay, good.
But I, but I'm the same. I do have fears that are so ingrained in me. My fear of spiders. So I wouldn't be able to go and sit with a bunch of spiders. Although I don't let that stop me. And I've been to the rainforest. I've been to the desert in Australia. So I don't let that hold me back.
That's good.
Um,
I hear there's
um,
some monster spiders in Australia.
oh yes, the huntsman I think is one of the biggest, and luckily I didn't see any of those. I saw one in Bali because they seem to find me as well, and it was just sitting there until it was disturbed. And there were about 10 other people, but of course it made a beeline to me. So I'm jumping around trying to find the biggest place to stand away from this thing that was chasing me. Until I got to this wall, and there was about a 200-foot drop down into the jungle, or there was the spider. And luckily the staff came along and shooed it away. I
Oh
was on
wow.
a retreat at the time, and the worst thing was that they sort of shooed it over another edge. And then after that, all that debacle and everything, we were asked to lie down and meditate. And I'm going, what if this thing comes back? There's no way I can lie down and meditate. So I think I was excused for that one, and to go and get a very large glass of whiskey or something to calm down. But yes, it does. Yes, my fears can sort of come up and bite me in the ass sometimes, but it wouldn't hold me back. But it's interesting about the zip lining. But yes, so yes, the Bucketlist Bootcamp challenge is basically to get people to start thinking about reconnecting with their dreams, their hopes, and their desires. What have you always wanted to do? What I encourage people to do is to think of 5 things, one major thing, and then 4 smaller things. Because if we overwhelm ourselves with the biggest thing at the beginning and it's not seen through, then we often then get put off. So what it is it's 5 days And I talk you through reconnecting with those dreams and desires, and to write them down, not with no judgment, no thought of how can I do that financially or time-wise or anything. Just put everything down you want to do. And then we streamline it a little bit, and then we look at the logistics, but we also look at what would hold you back. And one of the biggest things that often hold us back from doing things, apart from fear, of course, is the limitations, and also that we choose to do the wrong thing because they're not coming from the right place. So I encourage people to really sit and do a visualization of everything that they would want to do. And of course, feelings like if you thought about the zip line coming up, there would be fear in that, but then you visualize how you would feel at the end of it, and is that strong enough to move you forward? So there are great ways that you can really get in touch with what you want to do. I mean, a lot of people put on their bucket list jumping out of an airplane, and for me, that just doesn't interest me. It doesn't excite me. So I wouldn't put that on. So it is very individual. But what it is, as I say, it's just to start creating a more adventurous life. And then by the end of it, hopefully you will be on the path to ticking off at least one of the bucket list items that you've got on there. I understand that one of the biggest things that people say when they are terminal and they are on their deathbed and the way out is that they didn't do more of things that were for them, and that got them excited, because we do get so encompassed in everyday life, we forget to actually live. And I think it's so important, especially after what's happened now. We've come face to face with how precious life is, how short it can be, how a virus pandemic can, wipe out millions of people. So let's get life lived. And as I say, the actual premise is always never live with what if. So I am so excited. I say that very serious. I don't know why I sound so serious, but it is just such an exciting, it's a free challenge that it costs you nothing, but what it can do, it will cost you a lot more in terms of you will learn how to, as I say, combat fear, get rid of some limitations, stories that's held you back, and you will become more successful in life. You will be able to deal with, you will become better decision makers. Is a whole heap of reasons why to do it.
Awesome. I encourage all of our audience, please, the link to join the Sophie's tribe on Facebook is in the description. Once you get into her Facebook page list, then you'll be given the invitation to join the boot camp. So I invite you to go and get that link, go to her page on Facebook and join it, and we'll go from there. Do you have any final words for us today, Sophie?
Well, I mean, there are so many. Unfortunately, I am a big waffler, so I can try and get it down into a concise way of saying it. But it's just, I guess, everybody deserves happiness. Everybody deserves everything they dream of in life. Let's grab it and go for it. Let's enjoy having these new experiences, these new opportunities, meeting new people, but also come together in a tribe and be with like-minded people and support and collaborate and help people realize their dreams. And through that, we will get to know ourselves a lot more. We will awaken ourselves, which is the way forward. And then we will get more flexible, we'll become more adaptable, just in case anything like we've just seen happens again. We will become happier, and just embrace life and never live with what if.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Sophie. I really am excited about what you're doing and what you're up to and what you're contributing to the world. So thank you very much for what you're doing. You have
Well,
a
thank you very much, Gail, too.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful week. Take care, Facebook. We'll see you again Monday. Remember, the Summer Spotlight is only 4 days a week broadcasted. I'll still be working tomorrow in the office, but nothing online, I don't think, unless I pop in for a live. So, love you all, and thank you again, Sophie. Have a great week.
Thank you. You too, Gail.
Bye.
Bye.
When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life?